citing information published by the U.S. Department of Defense on April 11, 2025, the United States and Panama have entered into a landmark defense agreement that significantly boosts military cooperation and grants U.S. warships and auxiliary vessels, first and free, access through the Panama Canal. The agreement, signed during U.S. Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth's recent visit to Panama, is being positioned as part of a broader strategy to enhance regional security, strengthen bilateral defense ties, and counter China's growing influence near one of the world's most strategic maritime corridors. During his visit, the U.S. Defense Secretary Hegseth proposed the possibility of re-establishing a U.S. military presence in Panama by reviving former installations such as Howard Air Force Base and Rodman Naval Station, key sites during the U.S. administration of the Canal Zone. He framed the suggestion within the context of increasing security cooperation with Panama and growing concerns from the Trump administration regarding Chinese expansion in Latin America, particularly through infrastructure investments and port control operations near the canal. The proposal, however, was swiftly and firmly rejected by Panamanian officials, who emphasized that while Panama welcomes cooperation, the return of permanent foreign military forces would violate its sovereignty and the 1977 Torrijos-Carter treaties. The Panama Canal is an artificial 82-kilometer, 51-mile, waterway in Panama that connects the Caribbean Sea with the Pacific Ocean. It cuts across the narrowest point of the Isthmus of Panama, and is a conduit for maritime trade between the Atlantic and Pacific Oceans. Locks at each end lift ships up to Gaten Lake, an artificial freshwater lake 26 meters, 85 feet, above sea level, created by damming the Chagres River and Lake Alajuela to reduce the amount of excavation work required for the canal. Locks then lower the ships at the other end. An average of 200 megaliters, 52 million US gal, of fresh water is used in a single passing of a ship. The canal is threatened by low water levels during droughts. The French diplomat and entrepreneur Ferdinand de Lesseps was the driving force behind French attempts to construct the Panama Canal, 1881-1889. Colombian government allowed to build a canal across Panama, the 20th of March 1878. The agreement, known as the Weiss Concession, was valid for 99 years and allowed the company to dig a canal and exploit it. In 1897-1899, U.S. President William McKinley tasked two commissions headed by Admiral John Grimes Walker to recommend the best route for a canal across Central America. Although the first commission had been tasked only to consider routes across Nicaragua, William Nelson Cromwell successfully lobbied the government to broaden the terms of reference to also consider the Panamanian Isthmus. The commission issued a confidential preliminary report on November 21, 1901, shortly after Theodore Roosevelt had become president following the assassination of McKinley. The preliminary report favored the Nicaragua route on pricing grounds. Although the commissioners noted the technical advantages of the Panama route, they considered its informally quoted price of $109 million to be excessive. The U.S. formally took control of the canal property on 4 May 1904. Inheriting from the French was established to oversee construction. It was given control of the Panama Canal Zone, over which the United States exercised sovereignty. The commission reported directly to Secretary of War William Howard Taft and was directed to avoid the inefficiency and corruption that had plagued the French 15 years earlier. American enjoys control of canal until December 1999, and treaty between USA and Panama led to full Panamanian control effective at noon on 31 December 1999, and the Panama Canal Authority, ACP, assumed command of the waterway. The Panama Canal remains one of the chief revenue sources for Panama. Before this handover, the government of Panama held an international bid to negotiate a 25-year contract for operation of the container shipping ports located at the canal's Atlantic and Pacific outlets. The contract was not affiliated with the ACP or Panama Canal operations and was won by the firm Hutchison Whampoa, a Hong Kong-based shipping interest owned by Li Ka-shing. On 21 December 2024, then U.S. President-elect Donald Trump asserted that the United States should retake control of the Panama Canal from Panama, claiming that the rates Panama was charging American ships were exorbitant and in violation of the Torrijos-Carter treaties. The following day, he claimed that the canal was falling into the wrong hands, referring to China. Shortly after Trump's comments, Panamanian President José Raúl Mulino responded, denying that the United States was being unfairly charged or that anyone besides Panama was in full control of the canal, and affirming that the canal was part of the country's inalienable patrimony. Though the Hong Kong company Hutchison Port Holdings does have a concession to operate two ports near the ends of the canal, the Balboa Port on the Pacific side and the Cristobal Port on the Atlantic side, neither these ports nor the company control access to the canal. 3 other ports near the canal's ends are operated by companies from Taiwan and Singapore, and joint venture from the United States and Panama. The government of Panama receives dividends from the Hutchison concession, but the locks and marine traffic control are run independently by the Panama Canal Authority, and the harbor pilots that guide ships are Panamanian. On the 24th of December, a protest was held at the U.S. Embassy in Panama City over Trump's threat to take back the Panama Canal. Protesters referred to him as a public enemy of Panama. On the same day, the Bolivarian Alliance for the Peoples of Our America, ALBA, made up of 10 Central and South American countries, denounced Trump's comments and affirmed its support for Panama's sovereignty, territorial integrity and self-determination. In a 7th of January 2025 press conference, Trump vowed to gain control of the Panama Canal. He refused to rule out economic and military action against Panama to seize control of the canal, to secure what he called U.S. economic security. He reiterated his intent to take back control of the canal in his inaugural address on the 20th of January. On the 5th of February, the United States Department of State posted on Twitter that the Panama Canal would no longer be charging United States government vessels to cross. President Mulino called this an intolerable falsehood, and Secretary of State Marco Rubio, who had departed Panama a few days earlier, had to correct the announcement, saying he expects Panama to begin doing so in return for the Torrijos-Carter Treaty's guarantee of U.S. military protection in the event of an attack on the canal. On the 5th of March 2025, the American investment company BlackRock announced that a consortium, including also Global Infrastructure Partners and Terminal Investment Limited, would buy CK Hutchison's 80% holding in Hutchison Port Holdings, which owns ports at either end of the canal. According to the New York Times, the Hong Kong-based Lee family felt, under political pressure to exit the port's business. Discussions with BlackRock about the Panama Canal had begun only a few weeks prior, coinciding with the beginning of the Trump administration.